Hello, my name is Ivana Uwade, and I'm the creator of the Facebook group page JK Lifestyle and Travel. Today, we're meeting with Genaya Palmer. She's a licensed associate counselor and art therapist. She graduated from Caldwell University in May 2020, earning a Master of Arts in Clinical Mental Health Counseling and Art Therapy. Genaya has experience working with children and adolescents in bereavement, college students in disability services, and adults in inpatient behavioral health units. He believes in the healing power of creative expression across the human lifespan. Right now, Genaya is the team leader of the New Jersey Hope and Healing Crisis Counseling Program at the Mental Health Association. In this role, Genaya and her colleagues currently provide emotional support and brief counseling to anyone impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. The reason why I wanted to talk to you about the following topic, depression and anxiety, because you do have training and experience with it. And having the formal educational training plus the day-to-day experience working with people and counseling them and these type of things, I really wanted to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, well,
So thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here with you and to share some information, knowing that it is Mental Health Awareness Month. So I feel like it's very fitting to talk about depression and anxiety. Before I go into both topics, I do want to touch on like mental health and mental illnesses, because I find that a number of people may not understand that there's a difference between the two terminologies. So mental health is something that we all have. So it's like our emotional, our psychological, our whole well-being, right? It's how it affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act. So when we refer to the term mental health, we're referring to just taking care of all of who we are, our whole mental health and well-being. But mental illness is something different, because that's actually the medical conditions that someone will receive once they're diagnosed with like a mental illness, if that makes sense. So oftentimes I do find people use the words interchangeably and sometimes incorrect. And I think that's where probably some of the stigma lies, by not understanding that there's a difference between mental health and mental illnesses. And mental illnesses are also on a continuum as well. So that means that someone who may be diagnosed with depression, anxiety, their symptoms and how they behave may look different than someone else who had like a similar diagnosis. So it could go from mild to moderate to severe when it comes to different mental illnesses. When it comes to depression specifically, I want to say that, all of us do have moments in our times that we just go through different circumstances. We're human, right? So we do have times when we're feeling a little bit lower mood than usual. And we might find that may persist for a little time, but if it goes for a longer length of time, and if those symptoms are more severe, then that's where a mental health professional may diagnose someone with depression. And some of those symptoms include like increased fatigue. Someone's just like very tired. Oftentimes I hear some people may say, they're just sleeping so much, just to the point that they're missing different activities or even work, and it's impacting their overall functioning. So that's a main thing about mental illnesses, is that, it impacts how you interact with anything. So that could be work, school, your personal life, your home life. And when it comes to depression, it is it is a mood disorder. So many people feel increased sadness, and sometimes they don't really know why. Like there's not really a specific reason as to why, and it's sometimes unexplainable. And they may have even a lack of interest in engaging in activities that they find is enjoyable. So someone who may have enjoyed like writing poetry or playing a certain sport, they don't want to engage in that at all. So they just take away, it's like they don't have the motivation to do these things. It also affects how they eat too. So a lot of people who are diagnosed with depression, they see changes in their appetite or their weight. Some may eat less than they usually do, or may even forget to eat just because of they're still like ruminating in some of their negative thoughts. It's like an ongoing thing in their minds. And there's this feeling of hopelessness, like nothing could be better for me, or there's no improvement that could happen. So this constant feeling of hopelessness. Some people also feel guilt, feeling as if they may be a burden to maybe their loved one because they have these unexplainable thoughts and feelings that just arise from time to time, even to the point that they may even have, suicide ideation, so thoughts of suicide, because they're feeling like they're being a burden to those in their lives. So depression is something that affects a number of people. It's known to be a very common mental health illness, to the point that, some people even coined it the common cold of mental health, just because of how common it is amongst a number of people and different age groups as well. And people who are also depressed have difficulty concentrating, which is why it really does affect different aspects of their lives.
Depression, is it caused by a situation? Is it caused by genetics?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I want to say it's a mix of both. To some degree, it can be biological, but then if you think about like our environmental factors in different situations that we encounter as human beings, whether that's trauma, it's a combination of all those things. And that's why I say like there could be two people that undergo maybe a certain circumstance, and then that will show up differently of how they interact or how they face that circumstance will show up differently for both individuals. One person, it may not be as a significant impact on them, and they're able to utilize their natural coping skills and resources to kind of help them through. And then for someone else, it may be so debilitating that they actually have a mental health diagnosis from that. So it is a combination of all that. It could be biological, environmental. Yes.
Do people self-medicate sometimes to
Yes.
deal with depression or anxiety? In what
Mhm.
ways do they do that?
Yeah. So some people are self-medicating through alcohol, through drugs. I find that as human beings, it's like a natural thing to want to self-soothe. We've kind of done it from we were babies in a sense, trying to figure out like if someone doesn't attend to my need by me crying, like how do I help myself in a sense? So that natural need to self-soothe is natural for all of us, but we would have to really tap into our resources or recognize what's healthy and what's not healthy. And some of those unhealthy things are alcohol and drugs. And it's, most people go to it because it's a way to escape. It's a way to escape those negative thoughts, those feelings of anxiety or increased fear over something. They're looking for a way to escape that feeling. And even though it's temporary, they do find that, okay, I'm able to escape for this X amount of time. That's better than me feeling in this negative mood for a long length of time. So oftentimes, when I'm talking to people, we're trying to connect them to different resources or, talking about different ways to, cope in healthy ways.
How long can a depression last?
It's different for everyone. So for some people, it may go on for a few weeks at a time, their depression, the low mood, but it does vary from person to person. And for others, it's a little bit more complex, especially if they're diagnosed with like bipolar disorder, because someone with bipolar may have manic, meaning that they have like a very higher mood or elevated mood, and then they go to a very low mood of depression. So it does vary from individual to individual.
What are some of the strategies that you would recommend to help somebody overcome depression or be able to deal with it every day, to go through it
Yeah.
and
I
hopefully, make it to where they don't have depression anymore?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do find like a number of people who are living with depression that something that's helpful is really leaning onto their support system and whatever that means for them. It could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be someone who's in their spiritual church community. That may look different for everyone, but having a point person to really rely on, and that's in addition to mental health professionals. But I find that oftentimes people who are in need will go to someone who's a little bit closer to them, someone who's very familiar, like I said, a family member, a friend, or someone in their church community. And that alone is one step towards, identifying, hey, I'm not feeling well and I need some help. And oftentimes just by that the individual is able to connect them to a mental health professional. Or for some people, it depends on, what some of their needs are. They're able to talk to either a psychiatrist, another mental health professional who's able to possibly provide medication. It's not for everyone, but I do find that some people in combination of talk therapy and, medication, they were able to successfully live with their, mental health diagnosis, such as depression and anxiety as well. I don't think I really talked about that, but that's like an increased fear that we have. I do recognize that everyone has anxiety. You and I have anxiety. I mean, I could be full disclosure that, I get anxious to talk on like Zoom or present, and that's a normal level of anxiety, because to some degree, anxiety kind of helps us or motivates us to achieve certain things. But then when it becomes too much, where it's debilitating us to once again function in our everyday lives, whether that's work, school, personal, or professional lives, then that's where it becomes like a disorder or a mental health diagnosis. So I do find like a number of people may have even like social anxiety, or just anxiety over public speaking are some of the most like common ones that many people face. And using tips such as grounding tools or techniques can be helpful. That means like breathing techniques and meditation and practicing mindfulness, meaning being present in the moment, are different ways that people can really help cope with some of their anxiety.
Mhm. Well, thank you for joining me today, Genaya.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming.
You're
It means a
welcome.
lot to me. And I believe there's something that a slide you want to display.
Yes, I just wanted to connect everyone who's watching back to our agency, because we do have a number of resources that we have for whether it's you're an individual who have a mental health diagnosis, or you have a loved one with a mental health diagnosis. We do have different programs that I just wanted to highlight. And I think it's just important to share that, because oftentimes, because we don't know what's out there, then we're unable to really share those resources or receive help, right? Because we're not aware of it. So one of the biggest things for me is to always like share, so that way people know that, hey, help is here if you need it. Okay, so let me just start sharing my screen. I'll be very brief with this, even though it looks like a lot of information. I'll be very brief.
Okay.
So that way everyone could, get a glimpse of some of the things that we have here.
Okay.
So Mental Health Association has a number of programs. I work in the crisis counseling program, but the intensive family support services and Project First are things I want to highlight, as well as NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. That's outside of our agency, but it's a very great resource. And it also provided the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number, as well as the Veterans Crisis Line on this slide for anyone who may need it. So for intensive family support services, this is a program really geared to caregivers. So if you have a loved one who is diagnosed with a severe or persistent mental health illness, then you're able to receive individual supportive counseling. You'll be able to access some support groups, as well as some respite and self-care. There's some other things listed on this slide as well, but the key thing here is that once again, if you're an individual who has a loved one with mental illness, this is something for you to utilize, recognizing that the caregiver role is not easy, and there's help out there for you. For anyone who may have a loved one who's being either admitted to the hospital or getting a psychiatric evaluation, you can receive help as well. Supporting our loved ones who may have mental illnesses, it comes in so many different shapes and forms, and it varies of what that looked like, the support that would be needed. So let's say, maybe I had like a friend who is going in for a psychiatric evaluation or for hospitalization. And I wanted some support in the hospital or emergency room just to navigate, the system and understand certain procedures, and receive some supportive counseling. I'll be able to reach out to Project First and receive some help that way. So I'm really hoping that anyone who, may need this will recognize that help is out there. And I'll make sure I'll give our phone number at the end of the last slide. I did talk about NAMI for a little bit. This is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. They have a plethora of resources. So when it comes to educating yourself or others, support groups, once again, for those who have a mental health diagnosis or not, and they're really touching on all different, people in terms of cultural backgrounds and socioeconomic backgrounds. So there's so much information out there to just educate ourselves on. I just highlighted the Essex and Passaic number down here, but there's one just about in every county.
Okay.
And this is just tied to our MHA phone number. We do have presence in Essex, Morris, Passaic, Sussex, multiple counties, but these are our key phone numbers just to reach out for any help or any questions that you may have in terms of finding mental health professional and resources. And the last slide is just saying that you're not alone. So if you are someone who's diagnosed with depression, anxiety, or any other mental illness, just recognizing that you're not alone, or maybe you're supporting someone with one of those diagnoses, and it's okay to reach out to help.
Thank you for providing that information.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Yvonne. It's been my pleasure.
Mine too. Once again, this is Genaya Palmer. Genaya, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.